just finished breakfast on the first day of our Tahoe Rim Trail hike. Got Lake Tahoe in the background here. We're about 5 miles or so into our first day. We started up at Tahoe Meadows, which is by Mount Rose, just above Incline Village. So for people who aren't familiar, is like the northeastern corner of Lake Tahoe. We're hiking around clockwise, so we're headed down south through the Carson Range on the east side of the lake first, and yeah, so far so good. The terrain is pretty mellow. I looked at the elevation profile, and I think the first 2 days really are pretty chill. I mean, there's no easy day backpacking, obviously, but not like a lot of big climbs or any particularly foreboding topography. So I think it should be a pretty good day. So I would say this is our halfway check-in, but we're like half a mile from the campsite. Sitting next to a little snowmelt stream making lunch, and it's like 2. Is it even 2 yet?
It's 140, 150.
So yeah, basically 2. So in the state park that we're in, there's Nevada State Park that encompasses part of the Tahoe Rim Trail, and there's only 2 allowable campsites throughout that space, which, like, obviously you could break the rules, but there are sort of reasons because of leave no trace and all that good stuff that those rules are there. But it's like one of them is 14 miles from Tahoe Meadows, and then the other one's like pretty significantly off the trail and doesn't look particularly appealing to hike down to.
Got bad reviews.
And then we talked to somebody at lunch, or we talked to Loopy at the Tunnel Creek Trail Junction, and he was like, "Oh yeah, that spot sucks." So I was like, "All right, well that's the decision then," because the only other option would be to hike all the way to Spooner Summit, which is like 24 miles in, and then we'd be camping next to kind of like a highway, which doesn't sound particularly good. First day, take it easy. So we're very close to camp and gonna have to figure out what we're gonna do with like 7 hours of time. So we're probably gonna chill next to this creek for a good little bit and rest, and then we'll mosey on down to camp, set up, and depending on the water situation between here and camp, we may mosey on back over here to load up on some water later. Sorry.
How we doing, Mark?
How we doing, Mark?
We're okay. No, look at this. I don't have a beard, so I look very funny to myself. And then I feel better about the trip in general because Loopy said that the snow is not nearly as bad as it's made out to be.
Yeah, and what just happened mere moments ago. Mark made his lunch with an exactitude of water.
The perfect amount of water.
Which never happens. Sometimes it's either too watery or too chunky.
That's an herb and cheese spread.
Mark, how was the rest of day 1?
Apparently we've had so much free time that this is our 3rd check-in.
It's true.
It was good. We just chilled and hung out with Mr. So-and-so and the Russian and Loopy.
His name is Special Delivery.
And we told stories and laughed. It was actually pretty fun social interaction.
Yeah. So we got to camp at like 3:30 after spending like an hour or an hour and a half sitting at the creek. But actually today was really pretty. Like the terrain wasn't super, putting my finger in front of the phone. The terrain wasn't super challenging. We had like 1 or 2, maybe 2, like not super intense climbs. And there's a race going on right now. There's like a 200-mile race that people are doing. So kind of after Tunnel Creek, watched all the racers go by throughout the rest of the day, and then hung out with a bunch of other TRT hikers at this campsite tonight, which was pretty fun. My hip is not doing so hot, so I'm kind of curious to see how that's going to play out over the next couple days. like it'll, when I weight it, sometimes it gives out because I think nerve is getting pinched or something like that. So did a lot of stretching in camp today, just really trying to figure out what is like how to help solve it. And unfortunately, I think probably not having heavy water carries is going to be part of a solution, but I can't really control that
I can carry water for you.
I'm not going to make you carry water for me.
But I could.
Mark could hurt his own self by
I'm strong.
carrying water for me, but I'm not going to let him do that.
She's very stubborn.
Okay, I'm stubborn. Very brief check-in from the top of day 2, probably only like 2 miles or 3 miles into our hike for the day. But behind me is Lake Tahoe, and then this closer lake is Marlette Lake, which we camped about a mile away from last night. Don't really know exactly what the plan is for today. It's about 10 miles to Spooner Summit. We have water cached there, and then it's another like 15 miles to any kind of additional water. So we'll probably be dry camping tonight somewhere in between Spooner Summit and Kingsbury Grade, which is where the next water is. Part of day 2. We are up at the top of the high point between Spooner Summit and Kingsbury Grade. Mark and I both struggled pretty hard coming up that, like, we had like an 1,800 foot climb coming out of Spooner Summit. It was just hot and like hot, high lugging water. So both feeling a little bit haggard this afternoon, and that took us way longer than we thought it was going to. So we'll see. We're going to eat lunch here at this really beautiful vista. We're sitting on a bench that's just like up in the middle of this spot, but it's also very sunny, so we're going to probably tuck into the shade here to eat some lunch and enjoy the view from a slightly more protected area. But it's pretty cool because we can see a lot of the rest of our hike, so I'm going to switch and show you that. So right over there is Heavenly. You can see kind of the ski runs, and if you look at those snowy peaks behind that, that's where we're going to be headed tomorrow. And then all the way down, now if you see not these snowy peaks in the forefront, that's Desolation Wilderness, which we will be at in a few days, but we're going to be heading to those snowy peaks in the far distance first, when we come into Highway 50, and then coming through Desolation Wilderness all the way up to Twin Peaks, and then back up to North Lake Tahoe. And then what you can't see here is the sort of northern traverse of the TRT, back up to Mount Rose where we started. So we'll see how it goes. We are just getting into bed at the end of day 2. We ended up doing somewhere between 20 and 21 miles today, which was not originally part of the plan, but we've been getting some intel about the snow in the next section, and Mark and I both kind of decided we wanted to try and get to the base of where the snow starts tomorrow, which is like a little bit too far if we didn't go farther today. It was so fucking hot this afternoon. Yeah. Excuse my swearing, but it was very warm throughout most of the afternoon, and we packed like what seemed like an excessive amount of extra water, and we went through most of it. But yeah, so tomorrow we get into Kingsbury and head to Tramway Market to pick up our first resupply.
Parts of today were hard.
The views were really pretty, even in the
nice.
Yeah, even in the latter half. So we got up to the top of the climb out of Spooner Summit, which I checked in midday from. But then even coming down the second half, like it was like sort of wove into the woods a lot. but then you would like, it would kind of spit you out in these little vistas, and there was like really beautiful views of Emerald Bay across to the west shore, and just lots of really nice spots. So I have not checked in yet today on day 3. I don't actually have any idea how many miles we hiked. We came in this morning to Kingsbury Grade, which is sort of like the Heavenly Resort area, and it gets like pretty confusing when you get there if you're not just staying directly on the trail the whole time. And we were resupplying at a market there, so we did some road walking, got some food at that market, and then started hiking up towards Star Lake, which is sort of, we're hiking through the backside of Heavenly right now. Super stoked that we've got a stream behind us, and it looks like our water carries are kind of over for the time being. Hey Mark, how's it going over there?
Oh, you videoing?
So this will probably be my end of day 3 check-in. So you can see we're at a very beautiful lake called Star Lake. Check it out, pretty awesome. So we only did about a 16-mile day today. Pretty decent amount of elevation gain. We're up at about 9,100 feet now, which is good. So part of the reason we decided to stay here is, first of all, because, like, obviously, but then also because wanted to get a night at elevation, and then from here we hike up to 9,700 feet, and probably are going to hit a little bit of snow tomorrow. So, nice to hit all of that stuff in the morning with fresh legs. Yeah, really refreshing to soak my legs in the freezing cold water, and doing a little laundry and using the day to just kind of chill. Sounds like there's some squirrels attacking our bags over there, so I'm gonna go check in on Mark. Top of day 4. So we're just packing up camp here at Star Lake. Getting ready to hike up to Friel Saddle, which is just by Friel Peak, and then to Armstrong Pass from there. We've got about 600, 700 feet of elevation gain, so not too bad on the elevation side, but, in this first 2 miles, but we're supposed to encounter snow for the first time today, and on the approach I couldn't really see how snow wouldn't be a problem coming over the saddle, but everybody we've talked to who's hiked it within the last week, and then most recently the guy who hiked it yesterday said it was no problem and he was coming down. So I have a feeling it looks more intimidating than it is, but we'll find out. As I started filming this, I realized I have dirt
I'm Vixen
on the tip of my nose. It's not going to come off so easily, so I'm going to have to go rub my nose, get some water in my nose. Mark just pulled out of his bag. We're sitting next to a creek not too far away from the highway, eating some lunch, and Mark just pulled out of his bag what looks like a wad of white silly putty, and said oh, I'm so happy this stayed together, and then took a big bite out of it and then offered it to me. What the fuck is that? It's so gross.
It's a rock of goodness.
What is it? That looks so bad. Hi there, end of day 4. Today was actually a really beautiful hike for the first section. We made our way up to Friel Saddle, which actually I think might be the highest point on the PCT. It was about, or sorry, the Tahoe Rim Trail. It was about 9,700 feet. And then I always thought that Mount Rose was the highest peak around the Tahoe Basin, but it turns out that it's actually Friel Peak, which is about 10,800 feet. We contemplated a little side trip up to the top, but ultimately decided to come back and do that another time. And then it generally trended downwards towards Highway 89, though it was kind of not an easy downhill. It was one of those where you're kind of up and down and then, you know, feeling tired most of that time. And then we got down to Highway 89, and it was about a 1,000-foot climb up to Round Lake, which is behind me. Really beautiful afternoon. It's about 6:30 right now. Just got in, went for a swim in the lake, which was really refreshing and always a good choice. So yeah, tomorrow the plan is to push, I think it's about 13 miles to Highway 50. The plan is to push to Highway 50, which is where we'll hitch down to South Lake Tahoe. We've got a resupply there and all that good stuff. But reports are that one of the sketchiest places of snow on the trail is like literally the last 2 miles descending into Highway 50, or like a section of that like last 3 miles. But that's all about a week old intel from people who were hiking clockwise that we met a couple days ago. So we'll see. But that seemed to be pretty consistent. It was like that was even more sketchy than Desolation. So hopefully we don't get there and feel like sketched out enough that we want to turn around, in which case we'll be hiking 17 miles back to Highway 89. And we will not get there tomorrow. But anyway, check it out. See you tomorrow. I'll do our day 5 morning check-in while Mark's booting down over there. You can barely see it because the sun's shining, but the trail is basically a big river. Mark decided to trudge through and get wet feet, so we're moving along. Got probably about 8 miles to Highway 50, but questionable snow conditions after Showers Lake, which is about a mile up. So we'll see how the day goes. We started all the way down that away in that little valley down there. Coming up on the end of our hiking for day 5. We're about a mile from the Echo Summit trailhead. It's like 12:30, I think. So we decided to just kind of post up next to this nice stream over here, which you can hear. Getting my fat fingers in the camera. Yeah, so we're actually ahead of schedule on what we had planned. We pushed a lot farther forward because we were getting a little bit nervous about the snow here. The way that it was described to us, and again, that intel was about a week old, was that the snow was like persistent from Tahoe Meadows down here, which would be about 7 miles of consistent snow, so just a lot more like necessary route finding. The majority of the terrain, with the exception of the last 2 miles, wasn't concerning for snow. It's just, you know, if you're traversing over snow versus on a trail, you have to pay a lot better attention to like where you're going, and you're just moving a lot slower. But it ended up being really not that much. I do have a mud butt now though, because I was butt sledding down a bunch of berms of snow on the top of this hill earlier today, and the last one kind of did me in, and I slid directly into a big muck puddle. So I will probably put something down when we hitchhike down into South Lake Tahoe. And then I think under normal circumstances, we probably would just put back on the trail tomorrow, but because we weren't anticipating getting in yet, I had set us up with a room at the California Alpine Club, which I'm a member of. We have the organization has a property down in Marin on Mount Tam, and then one up here in South Lake, and that's not till tomorrow night. And I kind of want to stay. So we're going to take 2 nights and take a full 0 in South Lake Tahoe, get some tasty grub later, and do some laundry and pick up our resupply package, possibly today, actually. All right.
Our tent is breaking.
Also our tent is breaking. And I forgot to share the terrible news that my sunglasses and my bear can got into a altercation, and unfortunately my sunglasses did not come out.
Bear can 1-0.
Yeah, did not come out victorious. But sports tape will do a lot to keep things hobbling along. So, see you tomorrow.